Okay, good morning. This is day 56 for making little videos to describe sane thoughts in the day in the life of the schizophrenic Dominic. And I am diagnosed with schizoid affective disorder and experience schizophrenia. It is a reality to be experienced. You can look on my pinned posts on my Threads account and on pinned post on my Facebook account for day 17 and day 45 of these videos. In day 17, it discusses uh, why I choose to describe myself as a schizophrenic rather than targeted individual, and I go into detail there. And on day 45, the first 3.5 minutes or so is an introduction to these videos, and I try not to do too long of an introduction. And also on my pin posts and on my bio and threads and a pin post on Facebook, you can check out my book that I am writing, Veiling the Schizophrenic Tradition, and it discusses my experience and the technology and society and stuff, and that can produce these effects in people. Okay, so I'm going to head on to my talking points for today, express some sane thoughts. And Brendan Behan, I had discussed that a pub that I would maybe like to check out in Boston area if I ever visit to go to the baseball park in Fenway and stuff. Boston, there was a Irish pub there called the Brendan Behan, and it apparently is named after an Irish poet, and I didn't know this, and uh, a writer and poet who suffered from alcoholism, and he was followed by Bob Dylan and people in the folk scene and stuff like that. So it's an interesting little place. I could go there and non-drink alcohol. It's probably a sign that this guy suffered from alcohol that I would probably try to avoid drinking, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. All right, so I'll get into something else here. In another book I was reading called Never Enough, uh, it discusses in that book, in the recent pages that I read out of, uh, mothers and their children, and or parents and their children, and it discusses how children were expressing that they have been given pressure for like a singular path of success, and the idea of what it looks like, that we're creating like a singular path of what successful life entails and what it looks like, the nice house, the nice job, the high paying job and everything. And so we're putting it in our kids' heads like, this is what a successful life is all about. And and as a society we're kind of doing that quite a bit. And we have a situation where in our society we have haves and have nots, and we pit them against each other rather than saying let's create a situation where everybody has and everybody contributes and everybody uh, has a healthy life work balance and stuff. Like, I think I was listening to the something or reading something the other day, and it said something like, I think it was a guy named David Attenborough, who's like a British philosopher. I don't know what he is, but I've heard of him before, and that's kind of sad because he's supposed to be a famous guy. But David Attenborough, and he said that the point of the point of society is to make everybody's life better, is to make society and life better for everybody. And if we're not trying to take care of each other and make life better for each other, then what are we even doing? I think it's something along those lines, and I thought that was pretty perfectly well said when I read it. And so in this case, we're pressuring kids to perform and be successful at young ages, parents putting kids on path of success, starting in preschool and everything, and like we're in competition with each other to the point where like we won't even fund, Head Start, or now Donald Trump says it's all about competition and stuff, so we can't let everybody get ahead. Too many socially, emotionally developed people is not good, because we have to be stupid and competing with each other and not realize, hey, those guys have all the fucking money and power, and they're dictating society from their oligarchical perch. And yeah, so anyways, this competition among peers, and uh, this singular path of what success looks like, is creating anxiety disorders in many people in our society. And this is resulting from our competition based order with our peers, I believe. And that's what the book believes too, and that's why I'm reading that book, because I'm like-minded. So I'm reading a like-minded book in that case. Okay, this got me into something a little bit of like, uh, as a, just I was reflecting on my own experience as a middle class white male. I realize that there's some amount of privilege that I have in this system, but at the same time, I have the disability and intellect of an intellectual nature due to political warfare on me for being white, and criticizing a black president in Barack Obama. And I wasn't even allowed to say those words for a long time, because the system that was clamping down on me would harass me heavily if I even came out and said that. So now I'm not saying I'm not for Trump. I'm not, but I think like a lot of times, uh, people get pushed into. I was just reflecting on like how people get pushed into that orbit because of the way race is operationalized on a psychological warfare aspect. There's a psychological operation utilizing race to push people in disparate directions, and it's really pushing the country to the right. And uh, that's not to say that we shouldn't examine the way race has been used in our democracy for hundreds of years, and the gap between the haves and have-nots, and how it relates to socioeconomics and race relations. And so I'm not saying I'm against DEI or anything like that. So but I'm just expressing my personal experience as a middle class white male, where I know I have the privilege. I know there's secret societies. I know there's racial, white power secret societies in society that intertwine and run through a whole thread of power in this country. And so, but at the same time, I do have my experience of being subject to political power of, well, minority in the country. Barack Obama was a minority president, but I experienced him turning the state against me. And so that was my experience as a schizophrenic and the schizophrenic reality. And yeah, so I think about like, there's almost like just to get into competition with peers. It's like a competition among peers. Like we're competing on racial lines, like who has the worst lot, who's suffered the most from society and everything. And so that's another way we're competing, instead of just saying like, hey, why don't we all say like there's a minimal standard that we should meet as a society, and help people get a leg up, and help people build wealth, and help people build power and political power, and uh, put control of society into everybody's hands, rather than just a few oligarchs pitting us against each other in these battles along what separates us, what makes us different and stuff. And so that gets into the Bernie with the universalism, and they created all these divisions in society. Just like what makes everybody different, so that we wouldn't talk about universalism, which is what Bernie was talking about, and it was all a way to undermine that aspect, that that effort. Okay, so this gets into something else that my uncle wanted me to talk about, which is the Michael James article. He's like a journalist, and former journalist, I guess he is. And he wrote a post, and he described the Trump, that we are already in a dictatorship with Trump. And so my uncle wanted my thoughts on the article, and I thought the article was good, and it's probably true. We are probably in a dictatorship with Trump, and he's already broken laws and not respecting court orders and creating some sort of weird Doge thing where he's dominating federal agencies without oversight from Congress or judicial branch or anything. So uh, I would probably have to say, yeah, I agree with the article. But where I disagree with the article is the notion of ostracizing people who are Trumpers, I guess you could call them, or whatever, or like purging, the idea of political purges. I don't think political purges are intellectually sound. Uh, you know, uh, I'm not. I don't really believe that you engage in political purges that you're doing the right thing, because you're basically. I just get into something that Lincoln. I was reading in a book. Lincoln said that the point of the country was to have, or the ethos of America was liberty and reason. And when you engage in political purges and you ostracize people from your life and you remove people from your life because they have a different political belief, that is not something that is intellectually sound for a democracy. And I know Lincoln engaged in the Civil War against the South, but the South attacked him first. And so, yeah, uh, there's a little bit of a contradiction with Lincoln, but he had the notion that the ethos of America was liberty and reason, and I don't think ostracization and political purges of people who think differently than you, or eh, or or are of a particular political persuasion are that effective. And the last time we had major political purges like that was probably during the Red Scare, and that resulted in not a good situation. We're now fascist in this country because of it. And uh, previous to that would have been World War II, and it was a total disaster. So we probably have some sort of weird World War III now. So I can't say I'm for the political purge, even though I think that we are probably in a dictatorship. And this gets into something else that I'll talk about in another time, because I'm running out of time here. But David A. Hughes talks about how we are already in a dictatorship. We've experienced a dictatorship in the realm of liberal democracy in America because of the way the media owns all information, and just in the hands of a few corporations. And Noam Chomsky talked about when indoctrination is just as important as coercion. Indoctrination to a liberal democracy is as important as coercion is to a dictatorship. And when you have indoctrination, you basically have a dictatorship. So, uh, yeah. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and end here. It was kind of a short thing today. Not enough time to really talk about these serious issues. So I don't know if I'm really doing that good of a job here. I gotta stop. Goodbye.